The Pokémon Legends series is now 2 games in, with Legends Arceus having released all the way back in 2022, and now Legends EA is coming out in just under 2 months on October 16th. So today, I'm going to take a look at Legends Arceus and what we know about Legends EA, and find the similarities and differences between the two. The core series of Pokémon games have often been compared to one another, with them building off of each other, leading to what people call the Pokémon formula. This formula usually focuses on elements such as the game's setup, with you travelling around a region, taking on 8 challenges to gain access to later areas, and then having a rival character who fights you sometimes, and a story where an evil team will do something to upset the natural order, usually involving a legendary Pokémon. While Pokémon Legends Arceus and ZA take from some of these elements, there are also lots of new differences from the original series of games. However, there are lots of similarities between both of them, so today I want to take a look at that. With that being said, let's get straight into it. Start by taking a look at the core mechanical similarities that we can see between Legends EA and Legends Arceus. Of course, the first thing to immediately call out is the clear parallels in the gameplay loop. Like with every game since Let's Go, Pokémon are found in the overworld rather than through random encounters. This is a fact true of main series games as well, with Sword and Shield and BDSP going for a half and half approach, but then Scarlet and Violet integrated them fully, like we see in Legends Arceus and ZA. Of course, it's then no surprise to see it back in Legends EA at all. However, some of the key differences between the way it worked in Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet also seem to be returning in Legends EA, such as Pokémon being able to use their moves outside of battle, and instead of running into Pokémon to enter a battle with them, you can instead just throw either one of your Pokémon at them to initiate a battle, or you can just throw a Pokéball on its own. It seems that this system is going to develop even further in ZA, as we see the player is not only able to catch Pokémon on their own, but as a series first, they'll be able to catch Pokémon once they've fainted. It also seems the battles in Overworld are no longer 2 different gameplay states like they have been ever since Red and Green. We see in all of the trailers for this game that you can just throw out your Pokémon whenever and use moves whenever in the Overworld. Battles now seamlessly transition into this, unlike in Legends Arceus, where you had to engage a Pokémon in battle for your Pokémon to be able to use its moves. It seems that the synergy between trainer and Pokémon is going to be heightened in this title to a dramatic extent, creating a completely new gameplay loop. In some ways that might seem a little overwhelming. For example, how are you going to be able to aim your moves properly? Well, in that regard, it seems that targeting will be returned from Legends Arceus. Targeting Pokémon uses the familiar Z-targeting system first seen in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, but it's now a common industry feature for games with aiming. Legends Arceus used this system to help aim Pokeballs and other items, and Scarlet and Violet used a worse version of the system, there was no crosshair so it was harder to use, to tell you some basic details about the Pokémon. And now it's back in ZA to help you target your moves. I'm hoping that in this game you'll be able to lock to targets rather than constantly having to hold down the ZL or ZR buttons like in the previous titles. You've also got the return of some of the Legends Arceus other core mechanics in this game, such as the fact that Pokémon can attack the trainer. While we don't know if this feature is going to apply to all wild Pokémon or whether it will just affect rogue Mega Pokémon, we know that the trainer can take damage like in Legends Arceus, thanks to the demo footage that was shown off at Pokémon Worlds at Gamescom. By the way, I'm sorry that I'm not actually showing the demo footage in this video, just because of the fact that logistically I'm not sure how that would work, because it's not my footage, and I haven't really got the connections to be able to ask people if I can use theirs. But, you know, just if you haven't seen it, there are lots on YouTube. The one that I've been watching is Austin John Plays, and I highly recommend his video because I think it's actually a very good showcase for it. So, the gameplay progression also seems to once again be split into missions and side quests like in Legends Arceus. However, it seems that side quests are going to be developing further, as you'll be getting lots of different types of requests from lots of different sources. For example, it seems that we'll be getting requests from Emma in regards to detective work, which will apparently see us tracking down missing Pokémon, lost items, and taking part in Pokémon battles. We also know that Mabel will give us requests for the Pokédex, though we don't yet know what this looks like. The Rust Syndicate, Quasartico Inc. and AZ also seem to give us requests based on information from the trailers and the website. Where Legends Arceus had missions and requests neatly organised in one menu, it seems that we might not see that in quite the same way in this game, as we've not yet seen anything that looks like a mission screen. However, we do see that in the Pokédex app there is a Requests tab, Whether these are missions that pertain to specifically to Mabel's requests, or if all requests will be organised here though, judging by the fact that everything else in this screenshot seems to be all related to the Pokédex, I'm willing to bet that it's probably just Mabel's, but we don't actually know yet. I'm hoping that there'll be an easy way for us to organise and navigate through these requests, as otherwise it could be a pain to do. Though in other ways, having them organised into groups based on certain types of request could be better for my head. So who knows? I'll have to wait and see on how I feel about this to make that decision. So, some of Legends Arceus' main gameplay mechanics have been removed for ZA, however, such as the excursion system, where you would choose which map to travel to, catch a load of Pokemon there, then report back to Professor Laventon. This system is completely gone, with Lumiose being fully open world like Paldea was in Scarlet and Violet. It seems we can explore pretty much anywhere outside of when the tutorial or story needs us in a certain location. I think this is a good way to kind of marry the open world with a linear story, but that's a topic for another video. Filling the Pokédex also seems to work differently to Legends Arceus. In that game, catching a Pokemon was just the beginning of recording of their data. To actually complete the Pokédex, you needed to get research level 10 for every single Pokemon. To do this, you would have to complete certain small tasks, such as catching a certain height or weight or variety of species, or defeating them with a certain type of moves, and this would be a repeated task, so for example, catching a Pokemon 40 times. Fun as this was, it did get quite tedious for a while, especially with how monotonous the tasks were. While I have completed my Arceus Dex, I was originally thinking I'd do every single task for every Pokemon, and I'm yet to do anything of the sort. I think I've done 3. I think I've done Rowlet, Dartrix, and Oshawott. But I should probably get round to doing at least the members of my team at some point, but you know. In ZA, it seems to be that filling the Pokédex is going to be done in the traditional way of catch a Pokemon, done. Personally, while I think this method is definitely going to be a lot easier, I think it would have been nice to kind of have a bit of a halfway house between the two systems. Maybe having to observe each species in different ways, like in Arceus, but not quite so extremely, as those tasks did get old very quickly. And probably having them be less specific would be a pretty good idea as well. It also seems as though the item gathering and crafting mechanics will be gone as well, which I personally think is a great shame. We do know that you can collect Mega Shards in this game, but we're yet to see any evidence of other material gathering, like in Arceus, or anything like a workbench to make your own Pokeballs, which implies that we'll be using the system for the other main series titles of purchasing Pokeballs from the Pokemon Center and collecting them from the ground. While this isn't necessarily a problem, I think that the collecting and crafting aspects of Arceus heightened the survival aspect of that game. Though I do admit that the survival genre aspect does seem to be completely gone in ZA, at least outside of Rogue Mega Evolution battles. Now, let's move on to some of the smaller details, specifically looking at battles in both of these titles. Legends Arceus introduced the idea that in Pokemon battles, the trainer could move around relatively freely. While this did very little in that game, as trainers can't really take damage during battle and there's not really much difference there, the feature is being greatly expanded on in Legends ZA. As we talked about earlier, battles are no longer a separate part of the gameplay experience to the overworld. You can, at any time during battle, recall your Pokemon and simply walk away or target a different Pokemon. As part of this, battling multiple Pokemon at once will return. We know that Pokemon moves will have a range as well now, so moves that hit multiple targets will be back as well, as they were absent in Legends Arceus. In the recent trailer focusing on the return of Link battles, which we'll come on to in a second, we see that Hyper Voice and Draco Meteor both knock out multiple opponents at once. Now let's talk about Link battles. In Legends Arceus, for the first time in the core series ever, there was no way to battle with other players. In ZA, this is not the case, as both private battles, battles with friends, and rank battles are returning. However, the format is completely different. With Pokémon Legends ZA moving away from the turn-based combat that has begun to feel stale and dull, Link battles have to change to fit the new combat style. The battles are actually very reminiscent of Battle Royales from the Alola games, however with a number of differences. In the Alola games, the battle would only go on until one trainer had all of their Pokemon knocked out, whereas now there's a strict 3-minute time limit and a point system. If you knock out a Pokemon, you gain a point, but trainers can continually revive their Pokemon after it has been defeated, and after a certain amount of time, a bit like Terra Raid battles in Scarlet and Violet. After the 3 minutes, the trainer with the most points wins. I'm not sure how people feel about this new battle system. I personally haven't often engaged with the online features of the games, just because I'm not as into the competitive side of Pokemon, and I'm honestly just not good enough, if I'm being completely honest. But I did quite like the look of the trailer for this feature. Of course, this feature not being an Arceus seemingly goes against the idea of a formula, but I raise you that every game in the series adds on features from prior titles, and adding in link battles is a great addition to the Legends series. It also works well because Legends Arceus really focused in on wild Pokemon battles, and it seems that ZA is focusing more on the trainer battle aspect, with aspects like the ZA Royale, which is a nice kind of flipping of the script. Let's also talk about one of the other core battle features making a bigger appearance in this game: trainer battles. Trainer battles were present in Legends Arceus, but were far less of a focus. Most trainer battles were done like wild Pokemon battles, where you would fight multiple Pokemon at once. However, for Ingo and the Galaxy team, you'd fight in a more traditional Pokemon battle setup. However, in ZA, trainer battles are back in a big way. Not only do you have trainer battles as you would in previous titles, through using the new combat system, with using moves and being able to move around, but there is also the ZA Royale, where every night you can compete against other trainers using your Pokemon to fight theirs and progress further in the game. Again, building on trainer battles is a great idea, as they were rather lackluster in Legends Arceus, although the fight with Volo on Mount Coronet was particularly tough, though that was more because he had 8 Pokemon, and his team was Cynthia's plus Giratina and then another Giratina. We know that, like in other main series Pokemon games, there will be certain boss trainers that we have to defeat in the ZA Royale. It seems that it starts out with just NPC-type trainers, such as Zack and Yvonne from the March trailer, but progresses to more carefully designed characters like Corbin, which I suspected back in my trailer analysis. This seems to parallel gym leaders from the other main series Pokemon titles, but also resembles the star system from Pokemon Legends Arceus. However, that was more tied to Pokédex completion rather than trainer battles. It's also interesting how you have 26 ranks instead of the 10 from that game. I'd also be interested to see what happens when this progresses, as the world appears to be completely open, so it could be that this progresses the story or opens something up, maybe more wild zones, possibly even being something as simple as gaining Megastones. We honestly just don't know yet. Another battle mechanic that takes it from the other main series games rather than Legends Arceus is the return of held items. Held items and abilities were both absent in Legends Arceus, making for a simpler experience. And while it seems as though abilities might still be gone, or in some way I'm not really sure, the whole Mega Victory Bell thing has kind of confused that, we do know that held items are back fully. Now, some people said this was obvious as soon as Mega Evolution was confirmed, but I kind of disagree with that. I remember that back in Let's Go, the last time we saw Mega Evolution in a main series title, we didn't attach Megastones to our Pokemon. Instead, we just had to have them in our bag and our Pokemon could just instantly Mega Evolve from there. I'm very glad that this isn't the case in ZA and that we're back to having proper held items too. We don't know how many items will be making their return, but we do know that Pokemon can at least hold berries thanks to the demo footage. Of course, we do know that strong and agile moves have been removed, as the move system has completely changed to fit within the new battle system. My god, try saying move 3 times quickly, it is not fun. The revamped turn system introduced in Arceus was a breath of fresh air and breathed new life into the turn-based combat of the series. However, what we see in ZA feels like an evolution of that, but it does mean that features implemented specifically for that system have been removed. However, it seems that the concept of moves gaining more power in a Pokemon's levels isn't quite gone, as we see that moves can become Gauge Plus moves, which boosts the Mega Gauge when queued up. As we see some moves that don't have this icon, we can assume that this system will be done similarly to Move Mastery in Legends Arceus. I think that we can expect that similarly to that game, moves that a Pokemon learns via level up will be mastered naturally, but moves learned by Tutor or TM will require an item, most likely Mega Shards, to master. Backstrikes also return in this game. Introduced in Legends Arceus, pulling off a backstrike meant going behind a Pokemon and launching a Pokeball at its back. It would result in the Pokemon being unable to move for a few turns if you were entering battle, or being easier to catch if you just threw a Pokeball. This feature returned in Scarlet and Violet, and then returns here as well, however it's slightly different. Now, in the ZA Royale, pulling off a backstrike means to use a move on an opponent before they see you, causing you to gain an advantage in battle. We're not quite sure what this advantage does for you yet. Okay, that's the battle systems pretty much compared, so let's move on to the other gameplay mechanics of these two games and see how they measure up against one another. To start off, let's talk about the removal of the other survival genre mechanics introduced in Legends Arceus, as this is one of the biggest differentiators from that game that we know of. In Arceus, you had a limited amount of space for items in your satchel, so you couldn't carry all of your items at once with you. This is reminiscent of the way that items worked back in the first 3 generations, where some would have to be stored in the PC. However, despite the fact that our bag is still called a satchel in this game, it seems to be back to how it was in other main series titles, organised into pockets and having seemingly unlimited storage space. This very possibly means that throwing items other than Pokeballs will also not make a return in this title. While I didn't really use the feature enough in my own playthrough, the option to throw items to help you in sticky situations was a nice one, and while I think it will be offset by the new systems introduced in ZA, it is interesting that they're not bringing this back. It does come back to the fact that this is set in the modern Pokemon world, where you see a much stronger relationship between Pokemon and trainers, and you don't see Pokemon attacking trainers so much, and vice versa. And so instead, most interactions between the two are done using Pokemon and Pokeballs. Despite this, however, Alpha Pokemon from Legends Arceus are returning in this game. I genuinely didn't think this would happen, as I just thought this would be one of those things that were gone with the other survival mechanics. However, Alpha Pokemon are back, and how they'll play into this game is yet to be seen. Though I will be interested to see them back in game, especially when it comes to tying them into Mega Evolution. Having an enormous Mega Absol is going to be quite fun. The item gathering mechanic from Legends Arceus is also back in this game in some form, however it's been boosted slightly with additional features from Scarlet and Violet added. Now, if any of your Pokemon are out of their Pokeballs, they can find and collect overworld items for you. Overworld items act as they did in Scarlet and Violet, as opposed to how they did in Legends Arceus. Most are in Pokeball shaped chests or with a sparkle rather than being fully modelled. This is a downgrade and one I was hoping that we weren't going to have to go back to, but there's always next time, and I can see why you do that for this game. Camera controls appear to act as they do in Legends Arceus as well, with other controls seemingly being the same or similar. Moves, however, now operate using the A, B, X, Y buttons, with them being organised in a diamond pattern to match the controller's setup. Crouching and dodge rolls also appear to be back in this game, however it looks as though they can only be performed in wild or battle zones or during rogue Mega Evolution battles. Based on the demo footage, they seem to use the same buttons as they did in Legends Arceus. Let's talk about the rogue Mega Pokemon, as they also seem to follow a part of the formula introduced in Legends Arceus. Rogue Mega Evolution adheres to initiate a boss battle with certain Mega Evolutions. It reminds me heavily of the noble Pokemon battles from Legends Arceus, which were used to continue that game's story, which of course is also reminiscent of Totem Pokemon from Sun Moon, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. We don't know if Rogue Mega Pokemon will be story important in the same way, as in the trailer they seem to just be kind of in the overworld, meaning they could be battled more so like static legendary Pokemon in previous titles. However, we do know that Rogue Mega Absol will be in the story quite early on, so it's unknown if the others will function in the same way. The battles seem to be reminiscent of noble Pokemon battles, as they'll be able to attack both trainer and Pokemon, and you can take damage in these battles. However, unlike in Legends Arceus, where you'd throw bombs at the Pokemon to calm it, it seems that instead this is a case of knocking it out with moves. Similarly to Terra Raid battles, it's actually recommended that your Pokemon is Mega Evolved as well, as they get a massive boost to damaging the rogue Mega Pokemon. Of course, Mega Evolution itself is a new feature for the Legends series, only previously being in the 6th and 7th generation main series titles, plus many spin-offs. The way it works in this game, however, is completely different, something we've looked into in our trader analysis videos, now being on a timer rather than just being a press this button and you can Mega Evolve till the end of battle. Basically, you can actually Mega Evolve multiple times in battle now, but you just have to have a full Mega Gauge. Now, let's talk about the formulaic approach taken to the stories and characters of these titles. I think it's fair to say that both of these games take more so from the games that they're based on, Diamond and Pearl for Arceus, X and Y for Z2A, but there are some clear parallels that would line up with the ideas of these games making a bit of a formula, and they get even more clear here. Starting with the characters, the parallels between the player are pretty clear. You go to another region, either via train or Arceus' powers, with no family or any particular ties to the past, so you have a fresh beginning in this game. You then join a team which sees itself as a team dedicated to keeping the peace within the region, either Lumiose or Hisui, and bringing together people of different beliefs. In both games, you seem to have some sort of mysterious connection with a legendary or mythical Pokemon. In Arceus, that was the game's title, Pokemon Arceus, and in Z2A, it seems to be Zygarde. Your rival characters are also similar, as both are based on the player character avatar that you didn't choose. While Akari or Ray are exactly the same as you would have been if you had chosen that model at the start of the game, Urbane and Tawny are different characters built off of the base of Paxton and Harmony, likely to highlight the new detailed customization features included in this title. Which, can I just say, I cannot wait to dive into those. While it seems that Urbane and Tawny will be following more so in the steps of a traditional rival character, rather than the more mentor, less rival type we saw with Akari and Ray, with them seemingly being based on Carlum or Serena from X and Y, down to them using the same Meowstic with the corresponding gender. They also seem to fill the role of getting us up to speed and having been AZ's main helper before we arrive. Speaking of AZ, he has parallels to two characters from Legends Arceus, specifically Professor Laventon and Commander Kamado. For Kamado, it seems that he's going to be the leader of Team MZ, acting as a sort of organiser to the group. He also provides the entire team with lodgings in his hotel, similarly to how Kamado was the leader of the group who created Jubilife Village. And his ties to Laventon are also clear, as it seems he's going to be more on the ground than Kamado, like Laventon was, acting as our first port of call. This is because the team is much smaller in ZA and will just not function in the same way. Similarly, Emma relates to Cyllene in many ways. Both of them will give you missions to help out and will reward you as well. While their personalities couldn't be more different, their roles in the story fulfill a similar purpose. While we rarely see Cyllene outside of Galaxy Hall in Legends Arceus, we know that Emma will be much more involved in ZA, but will also act from her office, the Looker Bureau. In some ways, she could parallel Laventon, as in Arceus he would have missions on his whiteboard in his room, so Emma giving us missions would be a good parallel to that. While on the topic of Professor Laventon, his Pokédex and professorly responsibilities are paralleled by Mabel in this game. Mabel is responsible for the study of Pokémon and Mega Evolution in Lumiose City, so there are clear ties to Professor Laventon there, but it's heightened by the fact that Mabel gives you requests and rewards throughout the game, similarly to Professor Laventon. Characters like Corbeau and Jet seem to have some parallels to Adaman and Irida, as there appears to be a rivalry there, however their roles will also play out very differently. They take also from character archetypes in the other main series games that were omitted in Arceus, such as Corbeau being an evil team leader like Guzma or Piers, and Jet being a company CEO like Luzamine or Chairman Rose. Of course, there are very clear parallels to the story with Sword and Shield, which we've talked about quite a lot, but I think that the story parallels with Legends Arceus could also be interesting and impact this game. So far, we've seen that as you arrive in Lumiose City, you'll quickly meet AZ in either Urbane or Tawny, and then move into Hotel Z. This is very similar early game progression to Legends Arceus, where you first meet Professor Laventon, Cyllene and Akari, and then move into Jubilife Village. While we can't yet be certain from what happens there, we can be sure that it involves you getting your first partner Pokemon, a Pokédex, going to Pokemon Lab for the first time, and then getting access to Wild Zones 1 and possibly 2. After this, you enter the ZA Royale. This is also similar to what we see in Arceus, where you get shown the ropes by Akari on a test run to the Obsidian Fieldlands, followed by the part of the game leading up to when you first meet Mai and Weirdeer. We still don't know much as to the progression of the story yet, but we can make some predictions. We know two main things about the story. It will involve the Ultimate Weapon and Zygarde. Those really are the only two facts that we really know about the actual plot of the game. I've tried to predict the story of this game in all of my videos so far, and haven't gotten very far, other than the fact that I think that Jet and Vinny might be the villains, as that follows a formulaic approach from the other main series titles. Pretty much all of them since Sun and Moon, with Luzamine, Rose, Churro and Sada. You can even include Volo as the antagonist of Legends Arceus, as someone who appeared to be friendly beforehand. All of them have been friendly and then all of a sudden turned evil as a twist halfway through the game. However, twist is a very strong word there. This being said, the idea that Jet and Vinny are harvesting Infinity Energy, like Rose and Oleana were harvesting Dynamax Energy, which might even be a version of Infinity Energy, but to learn more about that, watch my Area Zero video. It could be that this is the goal of powering the Ultimate Weapon, but to what end we don't know yet. We can also assume that the involvement of Zygarde will be more heavy than it was in X and Y or Sun and Moon. However, what this looks like yet, I don't quite know. As someone pointed out, Zygarde probably has some involvement with Team MZ, and we know that Zygarde will help us find the rogue Mega Absol. Aside from this, I'm not really sure what role Zygarde will play in the story. But can Legends Arceus tell us anything? At first, when I was starting this video, I thought so. I thought that I'd be able to draw more parallels, but there's actually a lot less than I thought. And that's perfectly okay. In fact, it's exactly what I want in many ways. I actually quite like that we're getting Legends Arceus, but not at all Legends Arceus in many ways. It's a new title built on the foundations of Legends Arceus, but also not feeling like a copy of that game, with a Lumio City filter on. It feels nice that we're going to have a completely new experience. But I'll talk more about that just now. So let's draw our conclusions and close this video out. So, to answer the question that I posed in the title of this video, no, there's not. There are a lot of similarities, as there are between ZA and the other main series games. While I think this game will feel more similar to Arceus than any other of the main series games, with small details like the item gathering and Pokemon catching feeling like that game, I think that actually Legends is really embracing this experimental, different feel where all the games aren't all built on the same blocks. This game takes Pokemon in a completely new direction, in the same way that Legends Arceus took us in a new direction with the survival system. I actually really hope that this is kind of what stays. I hope that what worked in this game sticks around for the future, like the new Pokemon and battle system. But I also hope that we get lots of new stuff for the next Legends title, and that we can really enjoy feeling the newness from each of these games. I can't wait to play Legends EA, as it's been forever since I got a game where I know so little about the story and gameplay going in. It's going to be great to feel like I'm truly discovering Lumio City, and that's why I'm trying to avoid leaks like the plague. I now know that some Pokemon have leaked, and I found out in the worst way possible, as my social media notifications leaked the Mega Evolution for my starter choice. I only caught a momentary glimpse, but it was enough that it's kind of stuck there in my mind now. I've since deleted the app off my phone and will be less active on socials until the game drops. I'll reiterate now that posting leaks in my comments is strictly forbidden, and if you do so, I will just have to turn comments off, which I really don't want to do. I hope you've enjoyed this video, with us comparing ZA to the other games and learning just a bit more about the game. Not every video needs to present some big revelation on finding out something massive about ZA, and I'm actually really happy with the results that I got from this video. It's also helped me to understand more for my theory crafting in the next few weeks. Look out for when I'll be starting to stream very soon, and if you want to be the first to know, check out my Instagram, link below. Just a reminder that we are trying to hit 500 subscribers before Legends Arceus drops. By the time that you're watching this, it's very possible that we've already hit 500 subscribers. And if so, it's just keeping going, you know? Eventually I'd like to keep this channel really going as a secondary way for me to be able to really put out all of my creative thoughts on Pokemon as a series. I like to talk about Pokemon from a lore perspective because I just love video game lore, and I also like to talk about it from a game design perspective because I am myself a video game designer. Specifically a student at the minute, but what's the best way to learn? It's analysing your favourite games. So, thank you so much for watching, but until next time, au revoir.